Hey, hey, good evening. It's 7 o'clock and it is time for Happy Hour with Dr. Lisa. I am your host. I am Dr. Lisa. Thank you so much for joining me. I'm so excited. I hope you guys have had a good day. I surely have. I've had a good week so far, and I couldn't be more thrilled with all of the exciting things happening to me. And so, one of the first things that I want to share is that I am so happy that you all continue to ask me a lot of questions. It helps me build my content. So, thank you very much. I am live right now on Facebook if you want to see this blog live. I usually do it on Instagram as well, but I just couldn't get the lighting right on Instagram today. So I just gave up. I'll post a video to Instagram later. And it's also going to be on YouTube. And I am going to put it on TikTok today. So once it is downloaded on Facebook, I will share it on my other social media platforms. You can also go to the website and you can making sure the sound is okay. Okay, you can also go to the website and you can go to the website on Podbean, or you can go directly to my website. All of the information is on there as well, links to find me and to hear these podcasts. So listen, keep the questions coming. I am going to answer them. We are talking about the questions that you all sent to me. You can also still send me your stories and I will talk about them, about your experiences with seeing ghosts and your kids' experiences. You can still do that, but I'm more focused on questions from the community at this point. And so you can reach me via phone 765-205-1959. You can also email me at kidscanseeghosts@gmail.com. I do answer questions, and we are going to start with this one. I wanted to just start with part two of the question about question one under the heading question on my website. On my website, it's called questions, and the question that I had last week was help. My once lovable child has turned into a monster. And so this parent wanted me to address different ways of dealing with her child. Some of you can relate. I know I can, who's in middle school. And so we started that last week. I didn't really realize how much I wrote in that blog. So we are going to try to finish that today and move on to the other questions that I'm being asked. I'm also giving you guys different kinds of advice on my website as well. So make sure you look at it for me, and I appreciate it. Thank you. I got to answer a question, a common question that's totally different. And it is not one that I've written about yet, but I get it so much I actually might write it up. But this question is in reference to infidelity. And I actually put the question on my Facebook page. And I probably should have made it public. And I didn't. But that's okay because I can still make it public at some point. Listen, women have questions about infidelity, fellas. They want to know, what can they do to stop men from cheating on them? And this is a question that I probably get probably once a week. Someone in distress about someone's husband cheating. I'm not discriminating against men, but men don't seem to care about this topic that much, I guess, because men do listen to me and they don't ask about it. Men just probably don't go around as concerned about infidelity as women. And so, I want to take the time to answer this question a little bit. Now, you can find all kinds of research about infidelity. why women cheat, why men cheat. I was looking at some stuff earlier today at random, and I saw references to studies in biology. I saw references to studies in psychology. I saw studies in, about the chemistry of men and women. So there are all kinds of studies out there about, why this is happening. And so women want to know how to prevent it. What can we do? How do we stop this from happening? I saw a TikTok video of a woman who was just in tears because her husband's cheating on her and asked her to wait for him until he makes his mind up, right? Yeah. All right, we're going to address this. Look, number one, if you are a woman who's been cheated on, or I guess this would apply to men as well, you have to make a decision about what you're going to do. And once you do it, you make sure that you are sure and that you follow through. I'm laughing because I'm sitting here looking at something with somebody commenting. And it's just kind of funny what they're saying, like women are a trip, boy. They're telling me stuff like, "Oh, I would kick his ass to the curb," and "or I would kick his ass," or "I beat him up," or "he wouldn't talk," and all these different things. So I'm just sitting here chuckling about it, and it's kind of distracting, but it's kind of funny at the same time. Listen, none of that stuff is gonna work to make him stop cheating, ladies. So you can just stop it. My thing is, if you want to stay in a relationship, stay in it. It's your choice. If he decides he doesn't want to cheat on you anymore and you forgive him, then act like you forgive him and stop throwing it up in his face. If you forgive him, you don't keep throwing it up in his face. If you don't forgive him, but you stayed, then that's a whole nother issue. And you have to figure out, how you're going to stay in a relationship, although you don't forgive, your husband or your significant other for hurting you. The other thing is stop talking about how violent you're going to be. If you're husbands or spouses or significant others cheat on you, you aren't going to be violent, even though women can be, we can get that angry. And so can men, but men can't go around slapping us, if we've cheated on them. Men and women allegedly cheat for different reasons. You guys go look that up. But here's the thing, and here's the root of the question. I always say, look at the root of the problem. A relationship is only as healthy as the two people in it. Period, point blank. If the two people in it, or even one person, is not healthy, then you don't have a healthy relationship. So that's one problem. Put that aside. The second one is stop worrying about what you could do to stop your man from cheating, because guess what? It's nothing you can do about it. I see you guys on YouTube and TikTok and Instagram and social media distressed about this. Well, for example, if Halle Berry can be cheated on, then where does that leave me? Because she's beautiful. I see comments like that. And do you think that's what that woman was thinking when she was getting her feelings hurt? No, she wasn't. Beauty has nothing to do with it. Women will typically blame themselves automatically, which is why you guys are searching for answers. What can I do? What can I do? You blame yourselves, and then you allow men to dictate how you're going to either accept their apology and move on, or whether or not you're going to stay. You give men too much power, especially in these situations. You make the decision as to what you're going to do and then stick with it. If you change your mind, that's fine. But let the choice be yours and stop allowing yourself to hear all of the background noise and making your decision. Now, you have to give yourself time to grieve, because because I'm talking about fellas, because this is what the questions are all about: how men will stop cheating on me. How can I get him to stop? How do I prevent it? So I'm talking to the ladies here. There's nothing you can do. You can be the most beautiful woman in the world. You can be the ugliest woman in the world. You can have the nicest body, or you don't have the nicest body. It doesn't deal with anything else, any characteristics, any race. It's all about decisions that people made. You don't want somebody that you can control anyway. You just don't. Why would you want to dictate what somebody else does? And you know what? You still have to look within yourself to find out why somebody is cheating on you. Yep. You do. You know, you can put the blame on that person. You can be mad at them because they did the cheating, right? But again, it takes two people. So you also have to look inside of yourself to figure out what you did wrong so you can change and so that this doesn't happen to you within that relationship again, or if you decide to leave that person, what you can do to grow from the situation so that you can learn to try to make sure that if you play any part of this in this situation, that you don't do that anymore. Because sometimes, ladies, we have to self examine ourselves. Introspection is a good thing. I've done it. You do it as you get older, and you do it at every stage of your life. So, my final thought is you guys just live your lives and be happy. Stop worrying about things that are outside of your control. And infidelity is outside of your control. Unless you can go grab a man's penis before he injects it into a vagina, it is out of your control. So stop asking me that question. That's my answer. Let's move on. All right, let's talk about these little monsters again, according to this blog. Self reflection is a good thing. Parents, you have to take the time to get away from your kids, especially when they make you upset. Breaks are okay. Kids will pull on your heartstrings. Mine do all the time. When they're being disciplined, can I just have a little time before you put me on punishment? Can you just stop my punishment at 3 days instead of 5? Can you do this or that? No, this is called discipline. So, one of the things that you have to do to keep your discipline consistent goes along with being consistent with doing reflection within yourself. Why? Because you do have to consider your own feelings, because discipline is not easy. Structure is not easy with kids. And honestly, sometimes you just want to your kids because they're getting on your nerves. And so that's kind of where this parent is. What happened? And some behaviors are allowed, and you have to come to terms with that. You allow some of these behaviors to happen. And so sometimes when you do self reflection, so this is what I used to do. I have a lot of stories about this. I used to walk away sometimes and think, what was my part in this? What could I do better? Why did I allow my child to have a day off from punishment? I had to start thinking about what I could do better, because that is how it helps you to stay on track, because you take responsibility for your own actions, for things that you don't notice when you are dealing with your kids' behaviors. Okay, so this is where you start to fix your own tactics, how you go about dealing with some of the behaviors that you see. Listen, we all have to take responsibility for our actions. We always do. There are times when I even apologize to my kids, if I'm fussing too much or I'm yelling too much, things like that, to show them that it's okay to make mistakes. Another thing you can do with your kids is make sure you communicate with them. You have to do it in a manner that helps them to understand that you are the parent. So I'm not talking about negotiating with these kids. Listen, you don't negotiate. You set the rules and they need to follow it. But what I like to see happen with parenting is that we are still using effective communication as a tactic with kids to help discipline them, and not necessarily a negotiating point of view. So, for example, when you talk to your kids, you can say, just to kind of trick their minds, well, what kind of punishment do you think you should have? And they'll go, nothing. And go, no. So since you don't have any clue as to what you need to do, then this is what we're going to do. And this is how many days. And this, and this. I don't mind kids having a voice, but you have to set limits because you are the parent and not their best friend. You need to communicate with them in a timely fashion. You need to be honest with them. The one thing that my kids will never say I didn't do was to not be honest with them. I tell them all kinds of things, and it's because I know that I'm raising adults. When you are upset, the way to trick yourself into thinking that you're not as upset with them is to slow yourself down. Slow your breathing down. Take some deep breaths, especially when they're acting out, and teenagers will try you. So this kid in question is in middle school. Wait till this kid turns 16 and 17. They will try you. So learning how to breathe and breathing through communication is a useful tool for you to learn very early in dealing with your little monster. To this mother, always set clear expectations with your kids. They need to know what you expect from them. They need to know how you're going to implement discipline. They need to know ahead of time how you're going to manage their behaviors, but it also helps them to be responsible for the behaviors that they do and the choices that they make. One of the things that I've always told my own kids, and I share some of my own stories with all of you, is that my expectation was good grades. I never liked my kids getting under a B in school. And some people say that is strict, and I don't care because it was my expectation. If they really need help, that's different. But you have to know your kids. And I know my kids are capable of bringing home A's and B's, and that was my expectation. Why? Because that's their job. I go to work. Their job is to go to school and to get good grades. Good grades give you good choices in life. And that's what I tell them, and that it may not make sense to them while they're young, but when they're older, it will definitely make sense because they will have a variety of choices. So it's all about what you want to do and how you want to structure your kids. That's just an example of one of the things that I did with mine to structure them. And honestly, it was very successful the first time, just so you know, with those grades. One of the things or the behaviors that's lacking sometimes with some parents is that we forget about rewarding our kids. You got to reward those babies. We are quick to discipline them, aren't we? We are quick to tell them, don't do this, don't do that. I'm going to spank you. You sit in the corner for timeout. No, you can't drive. No, you can't this. But you know what? We forget to reward them. We forget to allow them to process the positive things that they do. Some parents get calls all the time from schools about negative behaviors, right? And you know what? When I was in the school and I would call a parent and they see that school number, the first thing I would say is, I am calling to tell you some good news. And the parents go, oh my God, really? And I'm like, yeah, I called to tell you some good news. It's a shame that you actually have to start your conversations with parents with good news or telling them that there's nothing wrong. We forget that. But as parents, we forgot that to reward them at home too. Now, you don't have to reward them for every single thing they do. My God, they're supposed to behave just because That's what they're supposed to do. So they don't deserve rewards for every single thing that they do. And if you do that, they will habituate to it, or it will become a habit, and they will expect you to do it all the time. So you don't have to do that to your kids all the time, okay? But you do want to remember that you want to give them a reward. It could be something like I'm gonna get one of my kids likes boba tea, and we haven't done it in a while. And good grades equals some reward for my kids, and so we are gonna do boba tea on Friday because my kids had good grades. So there you go. You could do it like that. All righty. Let's go into special education. One of my favorite topics is special education. So let's just say, our little monsters wind up needing special education. First of all, that's a process that does not happen overnight. I wrote a special education journal for all of you to view so that you can understand how to navigate the special education process. I get a ton of questions about special education. I am going to try to answer your questions about special education over time. It's a heavy topic, and it's also a lot to cover. So as the questions come in, I am going to address special education. So what you're going to do is you are going to use the journal that I wrote for you to document behaviors that you see within your kids. And once you establish a behavioral pattern, you can start to figure out some triggers that occur, which jumpstart some of the behaviors that you see. And so once you track the root of the problem, you can start putting interventions in place to address some of the behaviors that are happening. And hopefully when you do that, and you do them consistently, and you do them for quite a long time, you're going to start seeing some decrease in the frequency of the behaviors at home, and then interventions can be done at school as well. The thing with kids that have true behavior concerns, the behaviors always occur in more than one setting. So when it occurs in one setting only, they have some control over their behaviors. So I know kids that will go home and act a fool with their parents and then go to school and they're a totally different kid where they behave. Now, what's the difference? For one, schools are going to hold your kids accountable. Kids are smart. They are fully aware that schools will, those principals, everybody was scared of principal. Principals will hold you accountable for behaviors. And what will principals do? They will give you consequences: in school suspension, out of school suspension, and they will expel you. And they have other types of disciplinary tactics in their schools. I've seen some good ones from some good principals that work with kids. These kids go home and they cut up because they don't have the same kind of structure in discipline, and that they are allowed to get away with these behaviors. And last but not least, behavior is not consistent. Every day these kids go to school and they know what? That they will get in trouble, for example, for dress code. They will get in trouble for being aggressive toward a teacher. They will get in trouble for all kinds of things. And half of the time, they go to school and they behave. The ones that do not have true behavior concerns, the ones who do, those things don't matter. They still behave in a manner that is counterproductive to their education. And so that's a whole nother special education issue. But for your kids, if they're having some behavior concerns, you must do interventions at school and you must do them at home, because the goal of interventions is to determine what works to increase positive behaviors and decrease the negative ones. So we don't jump to special education just because you want it. There's a process that has to happen, which, at least in my state, which is Illinois, is an intervention state. It's a big intervention state. You must do interventions before you go to special education. And listen, guys, that makes sense. Even if you don't agree with it, and it makes sense because you want to see what works. One tactic didn't work, another one will. Okay. And so you want to see those things occur for your kids before you start talking about testing. So you put behavior intervention plans in place. Um, you put school-wide interventions in place. I'm trying to think of the other. Oh, functional behaviors, FBA. You want to put FBAs in place. There are all kinds of things that need to be in place. They need to be evaluated before you jump to special education. And I would suggest you allow the school to do that for you if the behaviors are to the point of interfering in their education. But if it's just in one setting and it's at home, then it's a parenting issue. So remember that. And there are parenting classes and other, behavior management interventions and therapists that can also help you to understand how to manage behaviors. I'm a behaviorist. I think everything is rooted in behavior. So I am on the side of these kind of interventions and also applied behavior analysis or ABA with kids that have autism, for example. So, guys, to conclude this blog and this podcast, I'm going to leave you with this. The best suggestion that I have for you pertaining to behaviors in children is to start early with structure and discipline as we do early education. That is the best advice because our babies are so cute. They are so cuddly. And they make us so happy. But they are going to grow up and they're going to be adults. And if you train them early, they will be productive adults for you. Okay? They are not really little monsters, not even on their worst days, even if it feels that way. They grow up. Behavior should get better as kids grow up and as they mature. And as they grow up and mature, remember, it's going to take a village. And we all need that. We all need help with our kids and raising them. Allow other people to help you. One area that some parents forget, but I didn't. I didn't do everything right. Let me tell you, I am not perfect. But the one thing that I remember parents doing when I was little to athletes is adding their coaches to discipline. And so when I grew up and I had an athlete, I added her coach to discipline. So make sure you don't forget about those coaches because there were a couple of laps and a couple of sit-ups and a couple of weights and a couple of benches that had to be done to straighten out discipline. And they might be upset with you guys, but later on, they will appreciate it. So stick with those things. And I know it's difficult and it's a battle. They do come back to you. Everybody kept telling me that. Oh, when your kids are like, 20, 21, they'll come back to you. And I'm like, oh, well, I'll be glad because this, and this. And it's just so hard. And and I hear you, mother that wrote the question about her child being a monster and changing, but you have to be very diligent and consistent. And you have to be faithful to your children to get them through this transition in their lives of middle school, but also for you. You continue to guide them. You do make a difference even when you don't think so. You will make a difference. When my daughter graduated from college, she said something to me and I kind of looked like, oh my God, she got it. And all the time I was telling her she got it. So they're listening to you because I didn't even know she was listening to me. And I thought, oh, she listens to me. And yes, they do come back. Think about the relationship that you have with your parents if they are still alive. I think about the relationship I have with mine. And believe me, 30 something years have passed and I'm a totally different person than I was, of course, when I was younger. So I hope that answers your question to the parent who asked me. And I really appreciate you doing that. Keep bringing them in. The next question I was asked was, does my child need testing? We are going to cover that next week. I am going to dive into this in a lot of detail because so many parents are frustrated. They're on a waiting list for special education, and I'm not special education, for testing, not special education. They're on a waiting list for testing. They are upset. They're not able to get their kids therapy. They just want help. So I am going to talk about different signs that will let parents know that it's time for their kids to be tested. And I think that's an important blog. I'm giving you all of the scoop starting next week. So, you guys, thanks so much for joining me. And I hope you have a good rest of the week. See you next week. Bye bye.